March 24th, 1603 AD. After 44 years of rule, Queen Elizabeth I of England continues her eternity, and King James VI of Scotland ascends to the throne, uniting England and Scotland under a single British monarch. The daughter of King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, Elizabeth succeeded to the throne in 1559 upon the continuance of eternity of her half-sister Queen Mary. The two half-sisters, both daughters of Henry VIII, had a stormy relationship during Mary's 5-year reign. Mary, who was brought up as a Catholic, enacted pro-Catholic legislation and made efforts to restore the Pope to supremacy in England. A Protestant rebellion ensued, and Queen Mary imprisoned Elizabeth, a Protestant, in the Tower of London on suspicion of complicity. After Mary's continuance of eternity, Elizabeth survived several Catholic plots against her. Although her ascension was greeted with approval by most of England's lords, who were largely Protestant and hoped for greater religious tolerance under a Protestant queen. Under the early guidance of Secretary of State Sir William Cecil, Elizabeth repealed Mary's pro-Catholic legislation, established a permanent Protestant Church of England, and encouraged the Calvinist reformers in Scotland. In foreign affairs, Elizabeth practiced a policy of strengthening England's Protestant allies and dividing her foes. Elizabeth was opposed by the Pope, who refused to recognize her legitimacy, and by Spain, a Catholic nation that was at the height of its power. In 1588, English-Spanish rivalry led to an abortive Spanish invasion of England in which the Spanish Armada, the greatest naval force in the world at the time, was destroyed by storms and a determined English navy. With increasing English domination at sea, Elizabeth encouraged voyages of discovery such as Sir Francis Drake's circumnavigation of the world and Sir Walter Raleigh's expeditions of the North American coast. The long reign of Elizabeth, who became known as the Virgin Queen for her reluctance to endanger her authority through marriage, coincided with the flowering of the English Renaissance, associated with such renowned authors as William Shakespeare. By her continuance of eternity in 1603, England had become a major world power in every respect, and Queen Elizabeth I passed into history as one of England's greatest monarchs. March 24th, 1989. One of the worst oil spills in U.S. territory begins when the supertanker Exxon Valdez, owned and operated by the Exxon Corporation, runs aground on a reef in Prince William Sound in southern Alaska. An estimated 11 million gallons of oil eventually spilled into the water. Attempts to contain the massive spill were unsuccessful, and wind and currents spread the oil more than 100 miles from its source, eventually polluting more than 700 miles of coastline. Hundreds of thousands of birds and animals were adversely affected by the environmental disaster. It was later revealed that Joseph Hazelwood, the captain of the Valdez, was drinking at the time of the accident and allowed an uncertified officer to steer the massive vessel. In March of 1990, Hazelwood was convicted of misdemeanor negligence, fined $50,000 in order to perform 1,000 hours of community service. In July of 1992, an Alaska court overturned Hazelwood's conviction, citing a federal statute that grants freedom from prosecution to those who report an oil spill. Exxon itself was condemned by the National Transportation Safety Board and in early 1991 agreed under pressure from environmental groups to pay a penalty of $100 million and provide $1 billion over a 10-year period for the cost of the cleanup. However, later in that year, both Alaska and Exxon rejected the agreement. In October of 1991, the oil giant settled the matter by paying $25 million. Less than 4% of the cleanup aid promised by Exxon earlier that year. March 24th, 1996. U.S. astronaut Shannon Lucid transfers to the Russian space station Mir from U.S. Space Shuttle Atlantis for a planned 5-month stay. Lucid was the first female U.S. astronaut to live in the space station. Lucid, a biochemist, shared Mir with Russian cosmonauts Yuri Onyufrienko and Yuri Yusashev, conducting a scientific experiment during her stay. Many scientific experiments during her stay, Beginning in August, her scheduled return to Earth was delayed more than 6 weeks because of last-minute repairs to the booster rockets of Atlantis, and then by a hurricane. Finally, on September 26 in 1996, she returned to Earth aboard Atlantis, touching down at Edwards Air Force Base in California. And it should be noted, her 188-day sojourn above Mir set a new space endurance record for an American and a world endurance record for a woman. The information documented on this audio file can be verified on history.com.